Hello, everyone. We're live right now. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Depending from where you're connecting from, excited to be on this show today, the Money Matters Live. And I want you to get ready, get your seatbelt tied up, ready, and get inspired. We're ready to be inspired. But before I bring in our guests, with us today, we have Mr. Carl Goodwin. Before I get him to speak with us, let me start by introducing myself, my humble self. I'm the founder of Money Matters Live Show, and we live rich and we spread wealth. A talk show and a movement that is all about helping people to live richer life as a result of becoming their best selves by being financially literate. Sandra is a best-selling author, your sales expert, a member of the Toastmaster International, and your Maxwell Leadership team member, speaker, coach, and trainer. I'm a business coach that is I'm on my way to becoming a millionaire. I'm sure you'll probably be excited and be smiling. Sandra's success and that of our clients is as a result of our practical, determined, and intentional proven systems for business and life success, to mention a few. And that the Money Matters Life, we focus on sales, savings, investment, real estate, life insurance, health insurance, and the businesses you can do in the 21st century. So I'm excited to have you and excited to welcome you to today's episode. And let me just... So welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time, please kindly like, subscribe, and please share. Invite all your friends to join us on this session. It's going to be very interactive. You can ask live questions, and the speaker will be able to take your questions. And I'd like to know where you're connecting from, where you're located, so that you're welcome. And before I bring in our guest today, Mr. Carl Goodwin, I'd like to read his bio. Dr. Carl, or Mr. Carl, I'm actually, he's a vice president and clients relationship director. His experience, he has over 33 years career working in the financial industry. Awesome. Previously worked at Mans Mutual, where he served as a senior relationship manager, working exclusively with the firm's government clients sponsor market. Carl was responsible for managing a broad suite of strategic resources to ensure overall client satisfaction, while actively supporting plan sponsors' efforts to drive plan and participants' health and fulfill their fiduciary role, while serving as an integral member of the local service team. He also collaborated with advisors to develop strategies for education and communication, as well as deliver comprehensive investment plan design, and administrative reviews. Carl's principal role was that of a champion for sponsors and providing the most appropriate solution to fulfill their needs, as well as that of their participants. Prior to joining Mass Mutual, Carl enjoyed a 24-and-a-half-year career at TIAA. In the first half of his tenure at TIAA, Carl was a senior financial consultant, worked with plan participants, and provided individual retirement counseling, and conducted educational seminars. During the later half of his year at TIAA, he worked as a relationship manager, serving plan sponsors, primarily in the government and the public education plan market, where he was responsible for several of the TIAA's largest public plans. He is a professional designation, financial industry regulatory author at FINRA, series of 6, 7, and 63. Life and health license education member. He has his bachelor's in business administration, London University. And his current responsibility is primarily responsible for overseeing the business strategy for existing institutional clients in the governmental and the higher education markets. These responsibilities include informing clients of updates to VOIA products and services, advising on regulatory impacts to clients' plans, conducting research and briefing clients on the industry best practices and serving as a client advocate within Voya for product and services enhancements. I'm excited to get our guest on board. Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome. So glad to have you, sir.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so very much. And it is my pleasure, my privilege, and my honor to be on your podcast this evening. This afternoon or this evening, wherever you may be dialing in from, we are going to talk about a topic that is certainly I'm passionate about. It's near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about somewhat the basics of estate planning. We're going to talk about generational wealth. We're going to talk about which is better, a will versus a living trust. We're going to talk about all of those, and I want to give them to you in the context of really establishing generational wealth. And generational wealth is a topic that's getting a lot of buzz these days. In fact, last summer, my family asked me at the family reunion, they asked me to give a very similar talk on generational wealth. That's really what they wanted to talk about, is generational wealth. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, as you can see here from the discussion topic, there are a number of items that I intend to present or intend to go over with you. Let me just quickly walk you through them. First off, I want to answer the question, what is generational wealth? I want to give you a working definition and then give you the types of assets that would be inclusive of generational wealth. Number two, I want to talk about, or I will talk about, why generational wealth is important. And third, I want to talk about how to build generational wealth. And number four, the challenges of building generational wealth. And number five, how to pass down generational wealth through your will, through the proper estate planning, and through the creation of a revocable living trust, and through making sure that your assets have the proper title, property title, or your accounts have a beneficiary on them. And for those of you who have been wondering whether or not you should have a will or you shouldn't, I'm going to answer the question, what happens if you pass away without a will? And then number 7, I want to highlight some additional very important estate planning documents that everyone should consider implementing. Okay? So let me move to my next slide here. Okay. Now, to answer the question, what is generational wealth? Well, generational wealth, I can hardly see that. Hold on for a second. Yeah. Generational wealth really refers to assets that are passed from one generation in the family to the next. And those assets can include individual stocks and bonds, mutual funds, real estate that you might have or own, other investments such as your savings account, your retirement accounts at work, your IRAs, your money market accounts, as well as a family business, because many of you may have a small family business that can be passed down as well, or anything that has a monetary value that can be passed down from one generation to the next. Generational wealth also includes some of the intangibles, such as financial education, values, and things of that nature. Generational wealth basically is wealth that is passed down to the next generation. That's what generational wealth is. Now, let me just give you a couple of examples of generational wealth. And I want to highlight 2 people that I know, or 2 families that I know. One family that I know, the mother and father died. And at their death, the parents had accumulated or amassed about 200 acres of land. And of course, the family house. So when the parents passed away, all of that was passed down to their children, to the next generation. And the children decided not to sell anything. In fact, what they've done is with that 200 acres of land, they turned it into income producing. Some of it they planted pine trees so that eventually they can harvest pine trees. With a portion of that land, they install solar panels. So they're getting income, generating income from the solar panels right now. And then third, all of this was farmland. So they also leased some of the land to a local farmer. So at this point, the 200 acres of land is generating income. Now, in terms of the assets that the parents left, they left a small amount of liquid assets like bank accounts and such. And so what the children decided to do was to, rather than to split that money up, they chose not to sell the family house, but they took the money and reinvested it and modernized the house and turned it into an Airbnb. That's what they did. So it's income producing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as it relates to wills and trust a little bit further on. Another example of generational wealth would be, I know a gentleman who passed away many years ago, and before he passed, he had accumulated probably about 18 rental houses or 18 pieces of property spread out over many states. Well, not many states, but spread out over about 3 or 4 different states. And all of the property was paid for. And so at his passing, all of those properties passed down to the wife and the children. And so they kept it going and generating income from those properties. So those are just 2 examples of how 2 families chose to begin to develop generational wealth.
Awesome.
Now, let me go to the next slide here. Okay, now, why is generational wealth important? Well, there is a biblical principle that supports the whole concept and the whole idea of generational wealth. So if you look at in the Bible, Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 22, and I'm going to read this from 2 different versions. One is the NLT. It says, "Good people leave an inheritance to their children, to their grandchildren, but the sinner's wealth passes to the godly." The King James Version read, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just." So there is a biblical principle behind generational wealth. Now, generational wealth is important because it can provide a significant advantage to your grandchildren or to the next or the future generations, rather than starting from scratch. Most of us probably had to start from scratch and work very hard, go to school, work very hard, get in debt. We had to get student loans. We borrowed money for our cars, borrowed monies for our homes. And in some cases, you even borrow money to send your children to school.
Sure.
Well, look, if there had been some generational wealth passed down to you, wealth gives you more options in life. We all have more. If you have wealth, you have more options. And simply stated, people who inherit generational wealth have a significant financial advantage over those who don't.
Yeah, true.
Things like, you can avoid student loans, you can avoid car loans and all that type stuff. So generational wealth is important. It is a very important concept to consider. Now, I want to talk about how you can build generational wealth. Now, the concept of building generational wealth is really easy. You simply have to acquire assets, such as the ones that I've already mentioned, or save cash that you don't intend to spend in retirement. And at your demise, those assets then pass along to the next generation. Now, this concept sounds easy. It really does. You just save money, You pass it on, money that you don't need. Although it sounds easy, in practice, this can be difficult, because if you're struggling to build your savings account, then thinking about trying to save for the next generation can sound and can be a bit overwhelming, which is completely understandable. Now, let me also say that it is critically important that you nail down your own retirement savings plan and other financial goals, such as your children's education and emergency fund. It's critically important that you nail those things down first before you start thinking too seriously about generational wealth, because you really need to nail down your own retirement. Make sure you got proper life insurance, make sure you got the basics together first. And then once those basic things are covered, then I think you're in a position to really think about building and leaving generational wealth. Now, here I have jotted down some notes. Here are some of the best ways to start preparing to leave a legacy of wealth behind for your children and your grandchildren. I've identified 8 things here that I just want to briefly mention to you that I think you should start doing now, if in fact you are concerned, or if in fact you would like to create generational wealth. The first thing that has to happen is you need to have a conversation with your spouse and your children and about generational wealth, its importance, the value of it, because your spouse and your children have to buy into this whole idea of generational wealth. So you have to educate them why it's important and how it will benefit them and how it will benefit their children and their grandchildren years to come. So that's number one. You got to talk about it. You got to educate your family. Number 2, make sure that if you don't already have a sufficient emergency fund or college fund for your children or house, start now. Start now but start now building that emergency fund. Start now setting money aside for your children's college and things of that nature. Start now. Number 3, if you are employed with an employer, contribute to your 401k or whatever retirement program is available to you. Contribute to it. And in most cases, your employer will match part of what you are contributing. Absolutely. And contribute as much as you can, because keep in mind, if you don't need all of the retirement assets or money, this can be left for generations to come. Number 4, invest in your children's education and teach them about personal finances. This is important. Teach them about personal finances, because after all, look, if you leave them a business or assets or money, but if they don't have the financial business acumen and appreciation to handle money or to handle wealth, they may squander it.
I'll handle it.
Yeah, they may squander it. So it's important to give your children an academic education, but at the same time, teach them about personal finances and financial literacy. So, and I can see that you've already started that, because you are listening to this podcast and you have subscribed to this podcast and channel. So kudos for doing that. Number 5, invest in the stock market. Now, you can invest in the stock market on your own through your stockbroker, or you can do it yourself, or just through your employer's retirement plan. But I want to stress investing in the stock market, because long term, the stock market gives you great appreciation. Yes, in the short term, the stock market can be volatile. In fact, it is. But over the long term, if you look at a 5-year time horizon, a 10-year, 20-year, the stock market has always appreciated over that period of time. So take the time to learn about the stock market. Number 6, invest in real estate. Real estate generally appreciates. Number 7, create a business to pass down. Create a business. And then number 8, take advantage of life insurance. And what I mean by life insurance is, look, if you still have young children at home, it's important that you have sufficient life insurance in the event that you expire prematurely. And having life insurance and having the right amount of life insurance can create a certain degree of wealth instantly. Okay, so take advantage of life insurance. Now, in terms of the challenges of building generational wealth, well, this country, America, has a long systemic history of racism and discrimination when it comes to housing, when it comes to employment, when it comes to banking, and a lot of that type of stuff. Things have gotten much better, thank God, but they're not where they need to be. The typical white family has 8 times the wealth of the typical Black family and 5 times the wealth of a typical Hispanic family. And this is data according to the Federal Reserve. And an estimated 70% of generational wealth doesn't make it past the second generation. So in other words, and this is why it's critically important to educate your children, to have them to buy into this whole concept of generational wealth and teach them financial business sense and literacy. So when they do inherit assets or wealth, they'll know how to manage it and make it grow. Yeah. Okay. But according to the Williams Group Wealth Consultancy, an estimated 70% of generational wealth doesn't make it past the second generation, and 90% disappear after the third generation. So again, generational wealth can be achieved, but it must, the next generation need to be educated. Now, let me talk about how to pass generational wealth down. Now, remember I said earlier, at the very outset, I gave you 2 examples of 2 families who had passed some wealth down to the next generation.
Yeah.
The one family, the first family that I mentioned, the husband and wife, uneducated, were farmers, but had amassed 200 acres of land. And then in the second example, this gentleman was very educated, and throughout his lifetime, he amassed 18 real estate properties. Okay, now let's keep in mind and let's be real. At some point, we all are going to expire, whether we want to believe it or not, or whether we want to think about it. We all are going to expire. Now, let me just pause and talk a little bit about how to pass down generational wealth. And the first way that you can do it, now there are several ways, but the first way that I'm going to talk about is the creation of a will. Now, I think most of you understand what a will is. A will is a legal document that you prepare, either yourself or your attorney prepares the document, and it really provides instruction for how you want your assets to be distributed at your death. That's what a will is. All right. Now, so let me give you an example. So take all the assets that you own, let's say your house, let's say your business, your automobile, whatever assets you own, through your will, you can say you want it to go to such and such. Or if you have some painting or some art, through your will, you can say that I want this asset to go to whomever. So that's great. Now, but with a will, it's subject to the probate process. The will is, if you have assets, in particular real estate, the will must be probated by the probate judge. A will becomes subject to public scrutiny, meaning that it is a public document. So at my demise, when my will is presented to the court, anybody can request a copy of my will. So it's not private. A will can be contested if it's not written up the proper way. So that's one of the challenges to having a will. Now, let me just give you some statistics here that I came across. According to the Consumer News and Business Channel, which is CNBC, 2/3 of American adults do not have a will. Let me repeat that. According to CNBC, 2/3 of US adults do not have a will. According to AARP, which is the American Association of Retired Persons, half of adults do not have a will.
Oh.
Half. Okay. So a lot of people don't have a will, and for some people that's okay. Now, later on, I'll tell you what happens to your estate and to your assets if you don't have a will. Momentarily, I'll tell you that. But for right now, what I want, the context of what I'm talking about is how to pass down generational wealth. And you can pass it down through a will. Another way, which I think is a better way that you can pass your will down, is through a trust. It's through a living revocable trust. Now, a trust is a document that you create. Think of it this way. You create a trust. Think about a box. The box will be your trust. You can take all of your assets, or many of them, most of the assets that you have, you can take those assets, your house, your land, your automobile, your bank account, even your business. You can take all of those assets and place them into a revocable trust. Okay? The trust is a legal document that you prepare, or with the assistance of your attorney, you prepare this document. Now, this is a living revocable trust, meaning that you can revoke the trust at any time. So you take all of your assets, or many of them, put them inside of the trust. You name yourself as the trustee. And if you're married, you and your spouse or your partner can be named as co-trustees. The trust will have very specific guidelines about how the assets are to be managed and to be distributed at your demise. Now, the one thing that I really like about a trust is not subject to public scrutiny. A trust is not, it doesn't go through the probate process. It's not subject to the probate court. This is a private document. So think about the assets that you currently own: your home, your car, your bank account, your art, your tools, your business, your LLC. You can put all of that into a trust that you own and you control. All right. So this is a better option than passing stuff down through your will, because remember I said that a will is it's subject to the probate process, and if it's not written well and tight, it can be contested, that type thing. So just that is another way to pass assets down to the next generation.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does the same apply to a living trust? If it's not written and typed, can it be revoked?
Yes. A living trust, which is a revocable trust, which is what I'm talking about, it is revocable. So it can be revoked at any time by whoever created it, because they're still the trustee. So it can be revoked at any time.
But the will is revoked by the judge.
Well, the will can be changed or altered by the person who wrote the will anytime before they pass away.
Okay.
So with a will, say my will, the Carl Goodwin will, as long as I'm alive, I can alter it, I can change it, I can do whatever I want, as long as I'm alive to do it. Once I die, that will can't be changed. It can only be probated by the probate court. Okay.
Thank you.
And here's the other drawback to a will is it can be costly. Oftentimes it requires you getting an attorney, and it can be expensive, and it can be timely too. All right. Whereas keep in mind, with a trust, yeah, you might have to pay an attorney to help you to draft it. But and you can always change the terms of your trust document. because it is revocable. It's not irrevocable. I think that a revocable living trust is a much better option, because not only does it outline how the assets will be distributed and managed at your death, if you became incapacitated, the trust document can have provisions for how the money is to be managed in the event you become incapacitated. Okay. Okay, now the third tool available to pass down. Now,
let's just take a break, maybe a minute break, and we'll
sure,
back to take the other one.
Sure.
Are you thinking of how to publish your book on Amazon, or how to get your published book to become an Amazon bestseller book? Dip Insight Books is the perfect in-between solution in transforming your ideas into a book. We can help you with all the complicated parts of publishing, such as process TO transformation. What we do: full manuscript evaluation, receive quality assurance edit, full copy edit and final proofread to remove spelling and grammar mistakes, oversee your cover design, create your interior layout, publish and distribute your book, lock down your marketing strategy. Ghostwriting, where there is no manuscript. Our goal is to help you publish your book promptly. Contact us today at 404-740-9091. Email us at info@dipinsightworld.com. To start the submission process, check us out at www.books.dipinsightworld.com and submit your details. You can visit our Facebook page at Dip Insight World.
So welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just to continue this thought on a trust versus a will, I favor a trust as opposed to a will. They both have a very definite purpose, but I favor the trust because the trust is private. The trust is a lot more versatile and all that. Now, remember earlier I gave you those two families? Well, what the first family did that have the 200 acres of land, what they did to preserve that land is they put it inside of a family trust. They put it inside of a family trust as well as the family house. And then the gentleman who passed away, his heirs did the same thing. They took those 18 properties and put it inside of a family trust. So at their demise, there is a protocol, there is a procedure for how those assets will be distributed and or managed. And keep in mind, our trust is private. Now, the other thing that the other tool that you have at your disposal to pass along generational wealth is, you see I have here, name account beneficiaries and property title. Now, this is important. Think about your bank account. Think about your retirement account. Think about your life insurance. All of those financial accounts that you might have, you can either have them joint titled in your name along with someone else's. Take myself as an example. My home, my vehicle, our investments are joint in the joint name of myself and my wife, such that at my demise, those assets by operational law automatically go to my wife, automatically. So think about your house, your car, your bank accounts. They, if it makes sense, have it jointly titled. Or if not, you can have a designated beneficiary. So with your retirement account, with your bank account, if you don't have another person on the account with you, definitely designate a beneficiary. Why is that important? Well, think about your bank account, and any investment accounts that you have. If I have a bank account that's in my name only, at my demise, that bank account is frozen. Once the bank learns of my demise, they automatically freeze the account. No one has access to the money until it's gone through the proper probate process. So the money is tied up. Same thing with your mutual funds, your CDs, and things of that nature. So if you don't have a second person on the account as joint owner, you definitely ought to designate a beneficiary. It's called transfer on death. So you can go, and this is something that you can do immediately. You can go to your bank and say, hey, I want to add my sister or my cousin or my child as beneficiary to this account. The benefit of that is at your demise, those monies would then be distributed to your beneficiary. Once your beneficiary submits the proper documentation, such as your death certificate, they will be given those monies. Now, if your name only is on the account with no joint owner, no beneficiary, at your demise, all that money is locked up. It's literally locked up until it goes through the probate process. No one has access to that money. So if you have a house, who's going to pay the property taxes if your money is locked up? So it is important. Now, with your life insurance, everyone knows that, if you have life insurance, you should have, and most people do have, a beneficiary. If you have a retirement account at work or an IRA, most people know and understand that you should have a named beneficiary. So in those instances, like your life insurance or your investment, boom, you need to have a beneficiary designated. And again, that's one way we're talking about how to pass along generational wealth, how to pass that to the next generation. Having your assets properly titled can accomplish that. And the same thing applies if you purchase a home or if you purchase a car or anything like that. If you have it jointly titled with you and your son or you and your significant other, at your demise by operational law, it automatically goes to the co-owner. Okay.
Great.
So let me move on. Now I want to talk. Now, remember I said earlier, I would tell you what happens if you die without a will. So, and remember I said earlier, I quoted to you the AARP, who said that only 50% of U.S. adults have a will, and CSNBC indicated that 2/3 of adults don't have a will. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not necessary for everybody to have a will, but if you have assets that you care about, then you should have a will, because the will gives you the ability to instruct how you want them to be distributed. Now, if you don't have a will, that means that you die intestate. Now, every state, including Georgia, every state has what's called intestacy laws. And that simply means that if you die without a will, without a valid will, you are said to have died intestate. Therefore, each state has intestacy laws whereby they set out who gets how your assets will be distributed in the absence of a will. So let's take, for example, the state of Georgia, since that's where I live. The state of Georgia says that if you die without a will, but you have a spouse, let's just use myself as an example. I have a spouse and children. If I die without a will, the state of Georgia says that all of my assets will be inherited by my wife and my children equally. So I have 4 children, 1 wife. So my wife would only inherit 1/4 of my assets unless my children, or 1/5 rather, of my assets, unless my children signed a waiver for everything to go to her. That's what would happen. Now you see the bullet point here says a spouse but no children. So let's say you expire, you have a spouse but no children. In that case, your spouse would inherit your entire estate. On the other hand, let's say you have children but no spouse. In that instance, your children would inherit everything equally. Okay? And then goes down a little further. It says if you do not have a spouse or children, then it says if you have living parents, your estate goes to them. If you do not have living parents, your estate goes to your siblings. Now here's the kicker. Now, if you do not have a spouse, children, parents, or siblings, then your estate is inherited in the order of grandparents, if they're still alive, etc. If the grandparents are not alive, then it goes to your aunts, your uncles, then first cousins, etc. All right. And if you have no living relatives, then your estate goes to the state. The state inherit your money. And I know you don't want that to happen.
Mhm.
Now, here are some additional important documents that I think you should consider. And hear me clearly and hear me closely when I talk about this, because all three of these are very, very important. I've had personal experience with each of these. One is called a durable power of attorney. A durable power of attorney is a legal document whereby you designate another person to act on your behalf. Now, let's say, for example, if you're in a nursing home, or if you're in the hospital, you're incapacitated or you're unconscious, or let's just say you're out of the country and you're in jail or you're sick, whatever the case might be, you've designated a person that you trust immensely to handle your affairs. Now, this durable power of attorney, you can give them authority to handle your legal matters, your financial matters, all of your matters. You can give them that authority. Now, the durable power of attorney is only valid during your lifetime. Once you expire, the durable power of attorney is of no value. It ends. Okay, it ends. I've been the durable power of attorney for my cousin who was in a nursing home for a number of years, incapacitated. And at his demise, my durable power of attorney obligations ended. The second document that's critically important is a healthcare power of attorney, or in some states, it's called a healthcare proxy, or it might even be called an advance directive. But this is a document where you authorize someone to make medical decisions for you in the event that you're unable to. Now, this is real, folks. This happens a lot. And many of you may have known family members or friends or colleagues who have been injured or sick, unconscious, or on life support, who were not conscious enough to make their own healthcare decisions. Well, if you had executed a healthcare power of attorney or healthcare proxy, this is the document where you designate someone else to make those decisions on your behalf. But again, it needs to be someone you trust. It needs to be someone who you've had a good relationship with and someone who knows what your wishes are. The third document here, the third and final document that I want to highlight, is a living will. A living will is different from your basic will. Your basic will that we talked about earlier doesn't take effect until you die. Your living will is something that occurs while you're still living. This comes into play. This is a document where you express your wishes regarding using life-sustaining measures in the event that you're terminally ill or in the event that you're on life support. Now, the healthcare proxy and the living will are two documents that kind of work together. It's really important that you have those documents, because if you don't have them, it could create some friction. It could create some tension within the family. I've seen that happen. So while you are in your right mind, you are sane, and you got all of your mental faculties, and you can think rationally, think about who's a trustworthy person, a responsible person that you can designate as your healthcare power of attorney in the event that you become incapacitated or you just can't make those health decisions, those medical decisions for yourself. Now, this is a document that you will need to execute and produce to your doctors or the hospital. Now, if you don't execute one, if you go into the hospital, oftentimes you can execute one, or they'll have a document where you can sign and authorize another person to act as your healthcare proxy. But this is important. because if you got a close family, or even if your family isn't close and y'all not all on the same page about the medical treatment for your parent or your sibling, these are really critical documents. So now, in summary, let me just say, I do favor a revocable trust over a will. It's fine to have both. There's no problem with having both. They're not in conflict necessarily if they're written the right way. Now, let me also say that when it comes to a will, you can do it yourself. I'm sure you've heard of tools and resources called Quicken has a software called Will Maker, which is what I use. There's one that's called LegalZoom.com, Quicken Will Maker, and there are others. You can purchase that software right online. It walks you through the process of creating a will for yourself, a health care proxy, and all of the other documents that I just mentioned. Okay. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, you can certainly hire an attorney. You can hire an attorney, a local attorney, to draft a will for you and draft the other important documents, such as your health care proxy, your living will, your durable power of attorney. So I wanted to at least point you to some resources where you can get this done, because you don't need to wait. So once again, LegalZoom.com, you can purchase their software, Quicken Will Maker, or you can look in the phone book or just Google local attorneys who specialize in estate planning.
Great.
Okay. What other questions might you have?
Presently, I don't have any questions, so you might want to go on.
Okay. Okay. Well, at this point, I think I'm just about, wait a minute, let me see if, were there any other notes? Yes. And in conclusion, I would say the next steps, bottom line, one, I have 2 bullet points here. One is building generational wealth in practical terms can be challenged, but it can be done. I want to stress that. If you're interested in building generational wealth, it can be done. It's not that difficult if you understand the process and if you understand how to do it. It can be done. Beyond the process of building wealth, which is challenging in and of itself, education and proper estate planning are 2 key factors that parents should focus on equally if you want the wealth to last. Because again, I stress, it's one thing to pass a lump sum of money or assets to your children, but if your children don't have the maturity, if they don't have the business acumen, if they don't have the mindset to really take those assets and multiply them, make them grow, if they don't have that mindset, then what you leave them might not last very long. So with that kind of concludes my prepared remarks. I'll stop sharing. And
thank you so much.
Hopefully you have gotten some benefit from my comments. This is a topic that I am passionate about. It is a topic that I really believe in. And I see all too often many people, and in particular people in our community, are ill prepared or not prepared when it comes to estate planning.
Sure.
Proof point. Think about how often you see advertisements in the newspaper, on social media, GoFundMe.
Very often.
Okay. Yeah, often, which is an indication that those folks are not prepared. You don't have to be one of those unprepared folks, but you got to take the time to educate yourself. Now, I know Sandra has had other financial professionals, other financial advisors on the show, who are in the business of providing financial advice, I encourage you to reach out to those persons. Now, I will tell you in full transparency, I should have said this up front. I am not an attorney. I am not a financial advisor who regularly work with individuals for compensation. That is not what I do on my day-to-day job. However, I will say that when I retire, this is the sort of thing that I fully intend to do on a pro bono basis in terms of providing financial education to our community on a pro bono basis. It would be my goal to have a network of financial professionals that I can refer people to. So if you need some real estate planning, I'll have a few estate planning attorneys that I can refer you to. If you need life insurance, I'll have some life insurance agents that I can refer you to. I have the knowledge. My passion is providing the education, the unbiased education. I'm not here to sell anybody anything other than the concepts and the ideas that I communicate. I don't have any product to sell you, none whatsoever. But I do understand life insurance. I understand investments. I understand estate planning. And it is my goal, it is my intent to educate people to the point that they won't be taken advantage of, educate people so that they will feel empowered when they talk to other financial professionals.
Awesome. That's a great one. So great to have you on this show today.
My pleasure.
I think I had some, having a living trust and having the will. So you have a comparison. And if you're just joining us for the first time or just coming online, you might want to go back to the video to get all the nuggets that were discussed earlier. So it was a great session, and, throwing more light on the essence and advantage, the benefits you get having a living trust over versus having a will. And that's awesome. And you also said, start now. It doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter how late. It is said that the best time to have ever planted a tree was 20 years ago. And the next best time is now, as in taking actions now. And it's about taking small steps gradually until you get to where you want to be. You can make mistakes. You're open to making mistakes. But like Thomas Edison always said, he said mistakes having to, when you have mistakes, this is 10,000 ways of doing things that didn't work. So you should be very open, happy to make mistakes, pick yourself up, and you go on. But if you don't try, then you would remain at the status quo. You spoke about teaching. You can have a lot of money, have a lot of estates and everything. If your children are not well taught, they will squander it. Besides leaving an inheritance for your children, you need to also pass on the right skills, the financial literacy skills to them. Let them know why you're putting this together and teach them. Let them be educated financially. Like Mr. Carl rightly said, that he has the information to pass on, meaning that if you need any information as regards investments, who to talk to, he should be able to give you some advice or point you to what to read, what education materials to gather for you to get the right skill. You rightly spoke about the stock market. I know people who go to the stock market, they want to make big money just in now and leave the next moment. The stock market, if you're not well prepared to stay for a long time, you could lose a fortune. How about friends who had lost money? They felt that, I can buy this stock and in 2 years I'm going to sell. But things went the other way. They had a bullish and a bearish market. Things went down and they lost all. So but in the long term, your money would always give back to others. It will grow. So beyond that, I think we've had a great session tonight. And I want to say thank you to our guests. Also, thank you to our speaker for today. It was awesome having you. I had a great time. I think I would have to go over the video again. And so please share. If this has been a blessing to you, please share with loved ones and friends and neighbors just to help them get the right skill to having generational wealth. It doesn't have to end with us. As children. The Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children. And so we're good people of God. And so we want to leave great inheritance for our children. So let's go back and watch this video. Let's share with our loved ones. Thank you so much. And should you want to contact us, I want to leave our details. So once again, thank you very much and have a blessed evening. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.